welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is Erik Rico Hoffmeyer. How's your day been?
It's been great. I killed 12 bugs before lunch.
Ever since we saw this movie in '97, you've been just smushing. You're up to like 50,000 bugs now.
I've been averaging about 47 a day for the last 30 years.
Man, that's crazy. So how many? I can't do the math on that. That's a lot. No, just yeah.
It's not enough. I'm not going to stop until they're all dead.
We've never until today picked up on the fascist undertones of this film. We just took this as straight up bug smashing.
Never. My 17-year-old brain, when I saw this, was just overloaded with machine guns and shower scenes and all kinds of mayhem. And then I went and read the book, which was completely different from the movie. And then I hadn't watched it in more than 20 years, and it pops up on Netflix. And, you know, we're all watching a lot more TV these days than normal. So I'm like, let's watch this again and see if it holds up. And it was a very different viewing experience watching Starship Troopers the second time, decades later.
Oh, I remember, too. You had the paperback of that book.
I did. I saw the movie, then I went out and bought the book.
And it's very misleading, too, because it's a completely different film. I mean, Verhoeven, he doesn't mess around. He did not want to mess around with what was in that book. It's a completely different experience.
No, wait. The movie is inspired by the book. The movie is really not much to do with the book at all. In fact, I was reading or watching an interview with Verhoeven, and he couldn't even get through the whole book.
Yeah,
he tried reading it. He's like, forget this. I'm going to do what I want.
Yeah, Verhoeven doesn't have time for that. I mean,
no.
You know, so they started writing this script in 91. It was a long process. And by the time they got to it, he had done over 4,000, what's the word? He had done, 4,000, it's not coming to me, 4,000, storyboard frames for this. And in the script notes, he had jots everywhere. I mean, this guy, as soon as he got into this script, he just started like writing and planning and making this the best way possible. And you know, they didn't even want to make it, the studio. It bounced around the studios. And by the time they finally made it, it's because he took a day off from Showgirls and he got with Phil Tippett, the guy who won an Academy Award for Jurassic Park, worked on the AT-ATs and Empire Strikes Back, the best in the business. And they shot a one-day test where an Olympic gymnast was being chased by a bug. And then he killed the bug. And the studio was impressed, so then they put him into pre-pro. And then that's when the movie happened.
That's amazing. I had no idea. I knew that the original script was called Bug Hunt on Outpost 9.
Yeah.
That was the original script before it went to Verhoeven. But that's amazing.
Yeah, they wanted it to be like a Zulu type, like siege thriller where these people were just getting smushed by bugs.
Yeah, that's what the battle was when they went to the distress call, was based on the Zulu movie in South Africa. I think the movie was filmed in the 60s.
Yeah, and Verhoeven wanted it just to look like that, where it's just one against many, and the bugs just completely outnumber them. I mean, that's I gotta tell you, so this was made in '97. Phil Tippett he did a lot of the like early CGI. Then you have Amalgamated Dynamics. They did Tremors in '90. You watch Tremors now, and that movie hasn't aged a day. Just type in Tremors miniatures right now. They still look beautiful. And then what also drew me in, I don't know if you noticed this too, Erik, but in '97, this movie was really violent. So you and I grew up on Die Hard, right? We watched Die Hard when we were 12. We watched 10, probably. We watched Pulp Fiction when we were 12.
I'm still trying to figure out how that happened.
You were 14, I guess, at the time. But we were Reservoir Dogs. I don't know if you remember this, man. Remember when I watched Reservoir Dogs when I was like 10? I'm like, I'm going to stop watching R-rated movies for a while. And then Lethal Weapon 2 came out, and I'm like, well, I kicked that habit, and I went to watch Lethal Weapon 2. But, like, cliffhangers, we were kind of used to that. But this movie...
People got ripped apart. Ripped by limb on this movie. It was kind of a different type of approach to violence in the 90s.
When that guy got shot in the head when he took his helmet off, I mean, that was so brutal. And Kevin Yeager did it, and he's the guy who developed Chucky for Child's Play. And he worked on Nightmare on Elm Street 3, or Nightmare on Elm Street, all the gags. And one of my favorite movies, Sleepy Hollow. Like, this movie had Verhoeven, who was hot. I mean, he had RoboCop. He had Total Recall. He had Basic Instinct. Now, Showgirls was a classic, like, NC-17 flop, but you watch it now and you see what he's going for. But I love movies like this, like Starship Troopers and The Happening, that these are movies that only get made when, like The Lone Ranger or Evan Almighty. These are movies that only get made when a director has so much power and so much success that he gets basically a blank check to make a
Plus
movie.
a stroke of luck.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw an interview where he said the studio had a revolving door of executives for the 14 to 16 months they are filming this. So the executives weren't around long enough to say, what are you doing? That's the Nazi flag. I mean, but that's, how did you do this? So they weren't around long enough. So it just happened at the right time in the Sony Pictures history.
And so you're an executive, and you're thinking to yourself, all right, I got Paul Verhoeven with Phil Tippett and Vic Armstrong, the guy who did all the stunts on Raiders of the Lost Ark and all these movies.
And $100 million.
Yeah, $100 million. You're probably thinking, I'm okay, right? I got Verhoeven, I got Phil Tippett, I have Vic Armstrong, I have Kevin Yeager, I have all the talent in the world on this movie, and they're fine. Phil Tippett, he did Jurassic Park. We love him. Let's keep him happy. So I'm just worried about my own job. Then they get fired, and then the same person thinks that. So Erik, you're the studio exec. You're Sony studio exec. You see this movie for the first time.
What just happened? What am I watching right now is probably my reaction to the movie.
And you're thinking, I lost my job. I just started here, and I lost my job. I didn't even fund this 3 years ago, and now I'm going to lose my job because of this.
Well, luckily you could say I just came in. I had nothing to do with this movie whatsoever.
They did it. But I think this is fair, man. Like, so we'll get to this in a little bit, but this movie, like for you and I when we were 15 and 17, this was guns, guts, blood, just swear words. It was 29-year-old actors playing teenagers, which is a little odd, and just state-of-the-art special effects and gore, and
you connect with it. You connect with it as a teenager for sure.
I mean, listen though. I remember when I was 15 though, I saw MPH in his Nazi regalia, and I knew enough then at the time to go, he's in Nazi regalia. Like, even when I was 15, I kind of
really,
I knew it. I was like, this is because you remember like during this time oh no,
because it was like Doogie Howser. Yeah. All I could see was Doogie Howser. I could not see the costume at the time.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I get, but for some reason, man, I was like, that's
something doesn't seem right here.
Exactly.
I can't put my finger on it.
Like watching that one kid go, I'm doing my part, and he smiles. And the very heightened performances when he's on video when Rico's on video with Carmen, and everyone's heightened. Like, it's a very heightened thing. So you're kind of thinking, and it's very brightly lit. I mean, this movie is incredibly gory and almost bleak, and at the end, it doesn't even really end, but it looks so pretty and glossy, and there's always it's a very weird experience, but I just remember going, gunfights, decapitations, like heads popping off like nothing. I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how when you focus on one thing, you can't see everything else. Like, there's a famous psychology experiment where this group of basketball players are passing a ball back and forth from one another. And in the psychology experiment, they tell the viewer, okay, watch the ball, see how many times the ball is passed to each basketball player and count. Now, you go through the exercise, you watch and you count the number of passes. And after at the end, they ask you, did you see the giant gorilla walk through the center of this basketball team, bang its chest, and walk away? And you're like, no, I couldn't see it because I was so focused on the basketball changing that I didn't see this giant gorilla walking through the action. And then they play it again, and then you see it because you're starting to focus on it, and that's all you see now is the gorilla in the middle. So it's just such an interesting mental trick that you're focusing on one thing and you completely miss everything else happening because you're so tuned into that storyline. Like, now when I look at it, and I just turned 40 and I'm looking at it, I'm completely creeped out by do you want to learn more? Do you want to know more? I'm creeped out by how they were going to televise the execution of the guy convicted for murder. I'm creeped out about these little kids in a frenzy state squishing the bugs. It's amazing how that now is what I see more than the actual storyline, because that's what I'm looking at later in life.
And Dez's dogged pursuit of Johnny Rico.
I think that's brilliant, because when I watched it for a second time, I was still as torn up when Diz died as I was when I was 17. And I think because Verhoeven is so smart, he's tapping into male primal instinct that you want a beautiful partner chasing after you. Yeah. You want this beautiful woman to want you. unconditionally, and it just plays into our male ego so hard that it really hurts. Like, it was way worse than watching like Trinity die in Matrix or any other movie where a love interest passes away, but that one hit hard.
I mean, he wrote that character as such an I don't know, maybe this is the right word, but archetype or stereotype as character. But I also kind of like that he kind of made her a badass, and I also like people also talked about the gender reversal where Carmen is the pilot and she becomes a successful one, and she's like, all right, Rico, I've had enough. Like, that's a cool little. I like how he does that. Like, he subverts your expectations in a lot of ways. But this movie
that
too
happens.
Like, he went into this movie though, knowing that I got blood and guts and all these things. So not only was he making a sly little satire, like the cinematographer of this movie. No, Phil Tippett told Verhoeven that he made the world's most expensive independent film, but he was also adding. He's also very good with Total Recall and Basic Instinct and RoboCop. Even when he's thrown in satire or something smart, he's also blowing up stuff. And
agreed. The part with Denise Richards, like, I mean, how many times has this played out? Millions of times every year when you have a high school sweetheart and you go off to college and you slowly drift apart because one person wants to do one thing because they set their heart on or their dreams. It's a perfectly rational decision that Denise Richards' character made. She's following her career and leaving her high school sweetheart. That's something that repeats itself in every high school across America all the time. So the fact that we would dislike her for it is extremely unfair. But I remember when I watched this at 17, I was like, oh, she's heartless and she's awful. But then now I'm like, I get it. You get to fly. Good for you.
And watching the Honest trailer, they were saying that she was. I mean, there's a lot of funny stuff in the Honest trailer, but they were saying that she's the worst. And I'm kind of thinking, she's going to be a pilot flying a massive tanker through. Like, that's I don't know. It's a pretty good gig.
You can do a lot worse than her character.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
No, but I like that. But it's another interesting thing about what Verhoeven's movies do so well is, I mean, when I watched Total Recall when I was a kid, I never looked at it the way I looked at it now. Like, when I watched RoboCop, I thought, I was like, these performances are really heightened and this is all odd. But now you watch it now and you're like, oh. So he knows how to. I think he knows how to appeal to 15-year-olds, but he also knows how to appeal to adults. But I got to tell you, this movie had a lot of rotten reviews. Critics did not really enjoy it. Some liked it, some did. But I really think some critics were just hot off of the hatred of showgirls. Because in that movie, Verhoeven swung and missed. He really did. I don't know if you ever watched a trailer for it or the movie or clips. I mean, the performances are so heightened in it that a lot of people just were like, what am I don't get it. I hate it. I hate this movie. So I wonder if people went into Starship Troopers with their kind of just ready to hate it because of the. I don't know if you noticed this, but remember when M. Night Shyamalan was on top of the world? And then he kind of showed some cracks with The Village and a little bit with Signs. But then when his next movie came out, Lady in the Water, everyone just hated him. It was weird.
Knives Out.
People hated him. There's like, oh, you gave me room to hate. I've noticed that when these directors make these good movies and they make one that's not so good, then you open up the door a little bit. And if their next one's not that great, they bomb them on that. So even watching, like, if I watched it now as a movie critic and I'd never seen it, I'd give this movie a positive review. I'd be on its wavelength.
Yeah, I actually went back and looked at the movie reviews from when it came out, and the Los Angeles Times reporter said it was a jaw-dropping experience, so rigorously one-dimensional and free from even the pretense of intelligence, it's hard not to be astonished and even mesmerized by what is on the screen. They missed it so hard. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, even Roger Ebert, who we both love, he calls it the most violent kiddie movie ever made. Because, yeah, I think when you watch the movie, you fall into one of four quadrants. I mean, I think we could totally swap this. We could flow chart it out. Where you either think you look at it and you love it and you're like, Kill Bug's good, yeah. Or you watch it and you're like, oh, I get it. I see the double narrative. I see what's going on here. Or you can watch it and be like, what is this B movie nonsense? And then in the fourth quadrant, I think a lot of people are terrified. Like, this is crazy. Fascist with all this military destruction and genocide. This is kind of frightening. And it's amazing how you can fall